Hi guys, welcome to the video and welcome to this beastie here. This is the GTN 750. It's by RealityXP and it's available for FSX, P3D and X-Plane 11. And I'll drop a link to their website in the description below. But fundamentally what we're going to do is we're going to run through the features of the kit and the basics of how to use it, because it is a very advanced piece of kit. Now what I'll do at this point is highlight a key area of this package that differs from other add-ons. So, for the purchaser of a real-world GTN 750 for their real-world aircraft, what you can also get is you can get a training package for that real-world piece of kit. And obviously, being developed by Garmin themselves, it is in effect a one-to-one replica of what you would have installed in your real-world plane. So the best way of describing it is a real-world interactive training tool of the GTN 750, which is used to train for the real thing. Now obviously that automatically means there's a very high level of fidelity between the aircraft and that piece of kit. So the best way to liken this piece of software is that when you buy it you get the real world GTN 750 training package, and you get a link that allows that to be integrated into the panel of certain aircraft, or at the very least a 2D window for other aircraft. That's an important point to make. Some aircraft are supported natively by it. Coronado have quite a few aircraft that applies to. Some aircraft, there are mods out there where you can integrate it. So the one I'm thinking off the top of my head is the Dreamfoil 407. But regardless, I think all aircraft have access to the 2D panel, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just that the aesthetics aren't there that you would have with this. And whilst it's functional on a 3D panel, it's actually much easier to utilise on the 2D panel. And to be fair, that's quite a common thing. I mean, you can set up views in X-Plane 11 or EasyDock or whatever that zoom in on the instrument, but I find just the 2D panel for me is just a little bit more easy to use. And whilst that does maybe lose a bit of the illusion, it's just how I prefer to use it. So what we'll do is we'll have a look at the main features of the panel first. There's quite a long list of things the panel can do, as you would expect, being basically a direct link into the real thing. And there's quite a lot of features that are not necessarily something that a sim pilot would use. So there's quite a few areas where I'll make mention of them, but they potentially don't appertain that much to a sim pilot. It's worth also highlighting that it's not just the 750, it's the 725 as well. So the GTN 725 is the same piece of kit, it just hasn't got the radio comms. But other than that, the kit's pretty much identical. So as I say, what we'll do is we'll break down the unit. Got a few things we're going to do in a flight just to mess around with some of the en route possibilities available with this kit. Now one of the things to make people aware of is the Nav Database, or more accurately the lack of cheap Nav Database updates. And there's a very straightforward reason for this, which may or may not put some people off the product. For me it's not put me off, but you know, to each their own. Basically, because this is a front end for the Garmin software, the Garmin software itself can only be updated with the Garmin Nav Data updates. That Nav Data update is a commercial product, is what real-world pilots use to update their real-world aircraft, so it has a commercial cost, and aviation isn't cheap, so you'll also find that Nav Data in the real world is not cheap. As I understand it at the moment, it's $130 I think it is for a single update, and it's $300 for a year's subscription, which is a lot of money. You know, there's no two ways about it, it's a lot of money. And to spend that money and have that data only work in one piece of software is a consideration that needs to be made. However, what I would say is that when you buy the GTN 750, you get a relatively up-to-date package. So I bought this early 2020, I think it was, earlier this year, and you can see I've got an expired database from 12th of September 2019, which isn't that old. Unless you're obsessive about spending lots of money to keep this up to date, it's not really anything significant. You can see up here, however, this is the software version 6.62 blah 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 training. That's because it's real world, as I say. Press the button, instruments spin to life. Next page, instrument self-test panel. It's very unlikely in the flight sim world you're going to have any issues with that. And you get to the main page. So, onto use of the unit itself. Four real sections, I suppose, if you want to be pedantic about it. The first is the outermost physical push buttons. Within it you've got the touch screen areas. So the outermost section, or section 1 if you like, is the knobs that are available to you without touching the screen. Up here you've got volume for the comm radios. If you press it as well, you also get squelch, so you can turn squelch on and off. Not really something we're going to use in the sim. Over here you've got the home button, automatically brings you to this page. Direct to allows you to go direct to Waypoint, part of your flight plan or the nearest airport. Very handy to have the different options. And then finally on the outside down here you've got the ability to interact with comm or nav. So if you press it in the middle, it'll switch between comm and nav, and then outer dial big numbers, and then inner dial little numbers. So you can, as I say, you can swap it between the two sides if you wanted to mess around with that. Dead easy, very intuitive, and those who've used Garmin's before will be familiar with this. So up to the main sort of touchscreen area now, and that's sort of broken down into three sections, I would suggest. The first is the comm audio up here, comm audio nav. The next is your main interactive pad area, and then down here we've got some annunciators which tell you that it's set for en route GPS and comm frequency nav, just directing you to where you can adjust it quickly and easily. So now looking at the top bit, you can see it's kind of duplicated left to right, in as much as you've got the two comm frequencies over here and the two navs. So green at the top is your active, and either cyan or white is your standby. It's pretty easy to understand, pretty easy to follow. Little double headed arrow in both means if you click it, it just swaps over between active and standby, dead easy. And then this button here, if you press it, you get into a keyboard, which is much easier to use than dials down here. So in this case we've got 120.25 dialed up. Now if I put 121.25, I can now choose between two buttons, transfer or enter. If I enter it, all it does is update my standby. So if you are well ahead of the curve and you know exactly what you're going to have as your next frequency, common instances of that would be, for example, where you know what your tower frequency is before you take off. For example, you're on ground, you know what tower is, you can pre-set it. However, let's say you're in the air and you've had a handoff from one ATC unit to the other, you might want to basically go 12025, and then instead of entering it and having to transfer it manually, what you can do is just press the transfer button. It will enter it and automatically make that frequency live. So really, really useful for ATC because it's, if you like, a one-hit wonder. You don't have to set it in and then go to the unit and transfer it over manually. It will allow that, which is really good for when you're using ATC. So real world, that's epic, but even in VATSIM or Pilot Edge or something like that, it would be great. And over on the right for the nav, it's basically exactly the same. You can see if I click standby, it comes up with the same options. So click back. Now we're going to jump to the middle now, so you can see it's got the microphone, which is what you're talking on, and the other one below is monitor, which is radios you're monitoring. And you can see that although you can only speak on one microphone, you can monitor two. Why would that be useful? ATIS. So you'd keep your main frequency on here, but if you have your ATIS set on COM2, then you'd be able to just ping it up here, you can listen to it and you can get rid of it. Nice and easy, straightforward. Audio panel takes that another step on. Now split mode, don't know what it does, but it drops back immediately. Playback controls potentially are very useful. I've never used this in a sim, but I have used this function in real life in a different setup. And basically what it allows you to do is it allows you to replay the last radio transmission or clearance, for example. So basically what you would have is you've got your playback volume there, 5 older recordings. You would then go and play the most recent recording. It would come over the audio in terms of what that transmission was. Really, really useful, epically useful in real world, and I'd suggest online ATC as well. And then you can go to the previous recordings. So let's say someone's stepped in since that previous recording, you can go back to that one. So really, really useful, very useful tool, highly flexible for helping you in the real world. Saves either stepping on somebody if the channel's busy but you didn't quite catch what ATC said, or if you didn't quite hear it first time round. Cabin speaker irrelevant in the sim, speaker volume irrelevant in the sim for me. Never bothered using it. Click back. Marker audio and sensitivity for the markers if you want marker volume, and 3D audio for me, I've no idea. Monitored radios are down here, so you can. This is where you can listen to your nav aids. Likewise, you can also do COM2 here if you wished, and microphone selection obviously is one or the other, because you don't need to be speaking on both COM1 and COM2 at the time. But as I say, it's the facility is there to have more manipulation in terms of nav1, nav2, etc. So we'll jump out of that. Intercom. Again, it's got it here, but I think this is something you'd use in the real-world trainer rather than in a sim. And then over here you've got the transponder. Now the transponder will automatically start up in standby. We'll put the UK conspicuity code in, which is 7000, and then you've got the ability at that point just to enter it. So we'll enter it, but what we'll do is we'll jump back in. Note that it's biased towards the American system, so if you click VFR it goes to 1200, but in the UK the conspicuity code, as I say, is 7000. And then you'd click enter. Now in terms of other functions on here, some of them are irrelevant to ourselves, so standby on and altitude reporting are obvious, so that's your mode Charlie. We'll chuck that on. Enable ES. I did read it in the manuals, I can't remember, it's quite an awkward term, but it's not applicable to the sim. And then once you enter it, boom, nailed it. Now once your transponder is active, it will go green, same as these up here, and then you can press ident and you get a little green ID. If for whatever reason you're on standby, it won't let you ident. So you have to be either on or mode Charlie to ident it. So as I say, there's a little bit more to that than initially appears. Now we get into the meat of the programming down here. Map does what it says on the tin, however this has got a really epic element. Let's say for instance you haven't got Navigraph or you haven't got an electric flight bag in the sim that would allow you to bring up charts and the like. You can zoom in far enough on this that you can actually get the airfield layout, and you can go all the way down, and when you get here you can see the letters, and they're actually the letters of the taxiways. So you can even have taxiway instructions and relate them to the GTN 750, which is really lovely. It's a lovely feature of it. So rather than having to call up Navigraph on a mess around with that, you can just go in here. So if they say taxi Juliet Papa hold Bravo, you'd be able to go down here and follow yourself. Brilliant. Now you'll see here these three characters down here are telling you what warnings are being placed on it. So the little diamond is in relation to aircraft, then you've got masts and obstructions, and then you've got pylons, and they're on the chart there somewhere, and you can see that's contextual. So as you zoom in it gives you more information, as you zoom out it gives you less information. The line at the bottom here, this is your current leg, your current routing that you're on, and then we've got some useful other information in terms of the distance for that waypoint, scale here, and your ground speed, direct track to that waypoint, and your current actual track. So there's a lot of information crammed in here, and you can actually get even more. But what you can also do is declutter it. So you will find the contextual menus are present with every screen or setup that you go into, and here you can see that you've got a vast amount of information that you can change. So topo is basically your terrain map. Terrain is your terrain advisory and warning system, TAWS. It's implemented in the sim. You can see that red is bad, yellowy coloured not so bad, etc. So that's fully integrated. And for those who aren't aware, it's not based on barometric pressure. It uses your GPS altitude and relates that to the local GPS terrain. You can also choose which level of airways you want to follow, so high, low, off, or all. We'll put them on low to this for this flight. Charts, if you have them installed, in theory can be used there. So and likewise traffic, you can add or remove traffic information on the map. So those are the overlays that go on top of the underlying map information. The underlying map information is here. So the map information, you can then, the number of possibilities for what you can set up in terms of options are just disturbingly high. So for example, taking traffic, you can choose what range you want traffic to show on the system. You scroll it by click and drag, but it's quite high in terms of your range, which is always beneficial for being able to plan early in terms of avoiding conflict. And again, it offers different types of traffic alerts. So all alerts and advisories, alerts only. Now the map is by far and away the most complex, so you can change things like orientation, heading up, track up, north up. What I will say is if you look here, once you get above 75 miles an hour, once you get above 75 nautical miles of range, the map will automatically revert to north up. But that can be altered, like anything else. Click on it, it can be altered, so we'll set it to 50 for example. In fact no, we'll leave it at 75. And then what happens is when you scroll out on your map in terms of scale, you'll see it eventually change to north up. There's a lot to it. We'll come back to user waypoint and VRPs later on. Land, what you can put on the land, and finally airspace. And you can even include which altitude band you want the airspace appertain to. So for example, if you're flying an unpressurized aircraft, you might not want anything that's above 14,000 feet because it's not pertinent to yourself. But you can also change the range at which point you can show the controlled airspace for individual classes, which is that's far more than I would normally use on a day-to-day basis. And then on the outermost side here, you've got map detail, most to least, just an easy function slider. Changing user fields, I've never bothered with that, and I doubt people are going to do in the sim. So at this point, there's only a couple of other things to highlight. The first one is the CDI will change your reference for what your flying reference is between GPS and VLOC, VOR localizer. And really that's the main bit for maps. Maps is quite an integral part of it. The other two that are quite integral for it, or quite significant for us, are as flight simmers, are flight plan and procedure. There's a couple of boxes I'll mention in a bit that are related to, if you like, the underlying functionality, but it's the kind of thing that you'll set it up once. You might not even change it. I haven't changed it. Traffic is as traffic says, so that's basically just your TCAS. You can change whether you're looking up, down, below, etc. Unrestricted, we'll just leave it on normal. And literally it just is what it says on the tin. And if you want to change scale, you can change scale just by rolling the mouse wheel over it in this case. But I'm sure on the real thing, I don't know if on the real thing that's how it works. But yeah, just roll your mouse wheel and jobs are good. And if you wanted to change the barometric pressure, you can do down here. So in terms of the actual menu, there's not really much that I use in the sim. I don't set up a shield beyond the default. Approach mode is something you can select, and approach mode and ground mode, what they will do is they will mute the TCAS so that you are not interrupted by traffic alerts and advisories either on approach or on ground, which is, you know, it's useful. Back to the main menu. Terrain is basically the menu options for how close to the ground you are. So you can set it in terms of whether you want it 360 arc, whether you want your flight plan showing, and the legend is available there, which shows you basically how much clearance you have or do not have in relation to the terrain. So you've got obstacles and also the terrain features itself. And as I say, the obstacles indicator as to what it's checking out are down here as well. But yeah, so is what it says on the tin. Weather isn't active, likewise services. Services is being able to plug your mobile phone in and listen to music, which is a shame we can't do that. Please excuse the dog yawning. Charts, I've not used this, but there's a strange anomaly here. So no information chart available. If you go to Gatwick, for example, no information chart, and it doesn't matter which of these you click, you just get no information. But if you click onto airport info, look at this. We've got preview of charts, procedures, runways, frequencies, nearest VRPs. So this is all something that seems a bit of an anomaly to me, that we can get the information. It's just instead of these buttons working, it seems to work through the airport info. Bit odd, but there we go. But that's, you know, that's pretty much that. Flight plan procedures we'll go into. Nearest we will probably go into at some point. Waypoint information is just detailed information about waypoints. These two we're going to mention when we're in the air, or in fact, these two we're going to mention in the air. Use a waypoint, create a waypoint. But airport is exactly what it says on the tin, pretty much the repeat of what we saw before, intersections, etc. So you can see that when you come through it, this route, what you do is you get the visual impression. My God, that's a bit busy, isn't it? But it is what it says on the tin. There's no rocket science involved in that. Utilities. I haven't used most of these, but I can understand where they would be useful in real world flight. So fuel planning, for example, if it's your aircraft, you'd be able to set up what you would expect as an anticipated fuel profile, and you can actually, in the sim, you can monitor it in terms of the fuel flow, etc. And it gives you information for fuel required at destination, etc. So although I don't use it much, I tend to overfuel aircraft because it's free in the sim. I can understand the usefulness of that. Let's just jump back. Trip planning, really not something I think we would generally use in the sim, but you can pre-plan your routes here for planning purposes only. It's not something that you would necessarily use that frequently in the sim. VNav is significant in terms of you can set your VNav constraints and your VNav parameters in here and monitor it. Up here is manual calculators, so if you wanted to know things like your calibrated airspeed or your heading in relation to your track, etc., you can get data there for that. Wouldn't use this in the sim. This is random autonomous integrity monitor, which is basically checking the accuracy of your GPS. Flight timers are actually very useful if you're doing instrument flight in terms of instrument holds, etc., and you're doing timed holds. Very useful. Also records information regarding engine when you've got power on, etc., which is obviously good for logbooks. Scheduled messages, generally there aren't going to be any. And then clean screen, screen cleaning mode in progress. Press home key to exit. Boom, nailed it. And system on the very end. There's a couple of things in here that we might want to use. So audio, backlight, voice command is not really something that's pertinent to ourselves. Units, we can choose the units in terms of gallons, etc. Just wonder, yeah, it's got the two different variations of gallons. So it's got gallons and imperial gallons. I think US gallons equate to approximately 4 litres and imperial equates to approximately 4.5 litres. But it can also do kilograms, litres, pounds, etc. Very, very useful, because obviously the aircraft that these can be fitted into are wide and varied. It could be anything from private jets to Cessna 152s, although the kit's probably more expensive than the aircraft in reality. But variation, nav angle, also shows a couple of other bits in terms of your format. So position format, it's got loads of formats, some of which are relevant, some of which aren't. I suppose the relevant ones from a simming point of view, or the most relevant one, is this one, which is lat and long in degrees minutes and decimals of minutes. But there's also degrees, minutes and seconds, and then down here you've got various map systems in terms of Irish grid, MGR-S, etc., British National Grid, blah 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 blah. But yeah, there's quite a lot to it, but I just generally leave it on the default. And I think that's one of the takeaway messages for this, is I leave a lot of this on default. Alerts if you wanted to set up which particular classes of airspace alerted. Setup is, yeah, I mean there's a couple of things in here you might want to change. So you can change the keyboard type between QWERTY, A, B, C, D, etc. Likewise, if you wanted, you can change CDI auto scale, whether the CDI auto captures or you have to make a manual selection, etc. So the long and the short of it is that this page is the route to a vast array of options. But the two we're going to focus on for this are going to be the flight plan and the procedures. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop a flight plan in, and we'll use it to demonstrate the intuitive nature of the system. So just click flight plan. You can import flight plans. I tend to it's just as quick really for me to put them in. We're not including any VNav information, so we'll just pop this in. So the system is basically, if you just want to add something straight after the last point, so in this case Gatwick, you'd be able to add a waypoint and just type in your waypoint. So in this case we'll just say Kenneth, which I know is quite a near waypoint, and then it comes up with your possible fast find up here, which is the most obvious one it thinks that would be pertinent to what you're trying to do, because obviously if you're picking something that's a VOR name, so Daventry for example, which is Delta Tango Yankee, it might all come up with several options, but we'll cancel that and we'll do what commonly we would do, which is going to be to click on here, and it's contextual, so it'll give you the options. You can insert a waypoint before, insert after, hold at that waypoint, load a procedure, load SAR. We might well have a look at that when we're airborne. It'll tell us the waypoint information, which is exactly what we had before. Don't need to worry about that. Go back here, and you can remove the waypoint, which we're not going to do because it's our origin. So what we're going to do in this case, load procedure. You can see departure, arrival, approach. We want the departures, and we want the Kenneths. Let's go down here. And we've got, we want the Kenneth 3 per par. And you can see it automatically inserts all the various bits of the waypoint. So it's quite an interesting departure. It's 08 right on Gatwick. It then comes around into a left-hand turn and continues all the way up to Kenneth. Now I mentioned it earlier in terms of the database. You can see in terms of departures, this is where I'm just going to mention the construction. So you can see the first 4 letters, Kenneth. Basically they relate to the whatever waypoint it is that that departure terminates at. So in this case it terminates at the Kenneth intersection, which is up here. The next number is the version number, and then the final one is Prepar. So Kenneth has the Prepar and the whiskey. The Prepar goes from 08 right and the whiskey goes from 26 left. So basically what you can do is break this down and it will tell you. So if you come across the Kenneth 3 Prepar, but actually in Navigraph it's the Kenneth 4 Prepar, it means that this is version 3 and what's on Navigraph is version 4. So if for whatever reason you put a route in Navigraph or SkyVector or whatever it is and it comes back with a Kenneth 4 Prepar, because it's more up to date, and you go into this and you find you've only got a Kenneth 3 Prepar, it's going to be a very, very similar departure. That's our departure, that's what we're going to fly. You can see it's got a constraint 4,000 feet at Detling 43, so that's 43 miles from the Detling beacon. So it's already giving you some situational awareness, and that's a really useful thing with these top-down maps, is they give you some situational awareness. It also gives you an I am here. Now at this point you haven't actually loaded it in, so we'll load the departure in and you'll see that now what we've got is all the nav waypoints, and you saw the HSI spin round because it's now looking for this. Now we just manipulate it to get all the way to the top. So we've got as far as Kenneth, and what we need to do is add the rest of our route. So got a couple of ways of doing this. If you click on Kenneth you get a contextual menu, so you can go and insert a waypoint before, insert a waypoint after, or load an airway. In this case we're going to load an airway. Now obviously if we click load airway it will come up with the options in case, you know, November 14 we're going to Octad, so it will then put it in and we can load it. And that's our airway. However, what we can also do is if we get rid of that, remove the airway, remove from the flight plan, it will get rid of every point on that airway because we put it in by virtue of an airway. What we can do is we're going to Octad. And let's say, you know, we've got a long route after this, so let's go Octad and let's choose Telba, which is the next one. Add waypoint, Telba. And now we're at a point where we go, oh, damn, I'm going to use an airway between Kenneth and Octad because there's actually an intersection. So there's, you know, there's waypoints over that we might want to relate to our flight plan. Likewise, this would be a direct line, so it might be that the airway is not entirely straight. It might be that there's a kink in it through whatever reason. But this is just going to straight line between the 2 points, and we don't necessarily want that. So I don't really want to delete all the route afterwards. You know what? Bang, Kenneth. What's available at Kenneth? I can load the airway. Oh look, the November 14's there, and it goes to Octad. And if I put that in now, oh look, it's just inserted our airway, and it knows what points to add. It knows where it terminates, and it automatically then goes. And after that, you're doing Telba, which is a direct to. So we don't need to do anything with that. From Telba, we're going to choose the Papa 18 to Staffa, which should be down here. It's all alphabetical, so it should be nice and easy to find. It's just I can't use the mouse at the moment. Load that. Next bit of our route from there is the Lima 8 to Honolulu. So Staffa, load airway, Lima 8 to Honolulu, load. Then we're routing direct to Daventry. So Daventry I could go here and I could put an insert after, and we just go DTY. Enter, and there we go. Daventry's now on the list. From there we're going for the Papa 166, so load airway. It's contextual, so it knows it's got only those airways available to it, and we're going all the way to Banto. and you'll see it's picked up that there's actually a point in between, and it will highlight this on the map. It will tell you a certain amount of information. Banto there. So now from Banto, when I click here and I load an airway, you'll see, oh, hang on a minute, it hasn't come up with a list of available airways, and that's because there is only one airway. We're on the Papa 155, it wants to know our exit from it, so it's basically saying you're on the Papa 155 already, it's the only available airway from this point, where do you want to jump off it? And in this case we're going to choose Sivda. Load that, and then finally what we're going to do is we're going to add Echo Golf Sierra Charlie, which is our destination. Enter. And we're going to make the assumption at this point that we don't know what our arrival is going to be, so we can just leave it like that. And then in flight we can make an adjustment to it. Now, as ever, we have a contextual menu down here, so we can have a catalogue of our flight plans, which we don't have at the moment. Popping back, we can preview the whole thing. There you go. And it gives you a list of all the waypoints as well, and you can scroll up and down, which is jolly nice. It at least gives you an indication that you've got a decent route. Back down here, we're going to go into a couple of these in a bit. You can store the waypoint, which is basically just saving it. Pop back. Parallel track, as I say, will cover VNav. We can include a VNav profile. I'm not at this point, but the option is there to do that. And you can invert the flight plan, which is useful. For example, I don't know, you're going on a business trip from Farnborough to Edinburgh and back, and you can just invert the trip. Now the caution there is that some airways, if you're using airways, are unidirectional, so you can only fly that path in one direction, so you might have to find that you fly a different route on the way back, at which point invert is no use. But if you're flying a VFR route, generally speaking, there's not much problem with inverting the route and going the other way. And if you wanted, you could enter the data fields, but for me, no point. And that is how you put a route on. Go back to the map, scroll out, and you can see your route is all the way over there. Now in terms of the cluttering, you can see as we zoom out, it declutters, and then we've actually got it turning to north up there, and as we go within 75 nautical miles. And I am going to declutter this a little bit in terms of the menu. What do we want to show? Don't want to show charts. I do want airways. Don't want traffic at the moment because it's explained there's not a lot of traffic. Go to map setup. Aviation, we don't want heliports. Land is all fine. Airspace is all fine. Traffic, will leave traffic as it is. It's not going to declutter a lot, in fairness, but it's enough to at least get a semi-decent idea as to what's going on. Now down here you'll see we've got a new button here. It basically allows you to suspend your flight plan. So if you were going to go off route for some reason, the most common thing I can think of would be to avoid weather. You'd be able to go off route, you can click suspend your flight plan, and then as soon as you unsuspend it, it will take you back, and you'll notice it's got an annotation down here for suspend. So the most common reason I can think of for that would be either traffic avoidance or weather avoidance. You will also notice that down here we also have our navigation information in terms of our current leg. So our current leg is on a course 078, 710 feet is our constraint. Although it says 710 feet in terms of an altitude, it's actually the first waypoint on our SID, and you can see it's highlighted magenta now on our map, and we've got a little annotation here, 710 feet, and the course after that is also 078. So it's becoming all very very informative for us. So at this point what I'm going to do is I'm going to get us airborne. We're going to follow the route, and we're going to do a couple of things as we go. Okay, so let's get airborne, do the first part of this SID, see how we get on. Try and stay somewhere near the centre line. Positive rate, gear up.
Traffic.
Don't want too high a nose attitude. Better accelerate to about 140. Select nav. GPS navigation, we'll select indicated airspeed and autopilot on. And she can follow the initial part of the departure there. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at this and we're going to go, hey, you know what? Yeah, I know we're inside airspace, we're supposed to be here. We're going to go, hang on a minute, we've been given a direct routing. So our direct routing, let's go Kenneth. So what we're going to do now is going to go direct to flight plan Kenneth, and then it's got that, comes up with a message there. Don't need a message because it's going to say new airspace in 10 minutes. We'll activate that, and you can see that as we look at it, what we've done is we've done a direct change. So we've done a direct change to our flight plan particularly. So let's just zoom this in a bit, and you can see that what we've got now is we've cut out all the rest of the routes so that we can go direct to Kenneth. Once we get up to Kenneth and up to altitude, you can rejoin me then, and what we'll do is we'll have a mess around with a couple of the options in terms of en route options. So we're heading along merrily along our route, and at the moment we're heading from Octad to Telba to Stafford, and you'll notice that now that we're airborne, we've got different information appearing here. So it's telling us our ground speed, which is useful for navigation, direct track, the track, and finally the miles to the next waypoint. And down here it's telling us the route is Octad, Telba's the active, that's what we're going to, and then next we've got Stafford, CDI is on GPS, and we've got a load of other information around in terms of the CDI here for lateral deviation. So let's say, for example, ATC say report 5 miles short of Telba, or report 10 miles from Telba. What we can do then at that point is we can go, what we do is, this bar now is useful because it's interactive as well. We can go here, we can go Telba, and we can go along track, and it will ask us how many miles, 10 miles before, 10 miles before, you could do after, but we're going to do before, and enter that. And all of a sudden you have Telba minus 10. If we go back to the map, you can see now we've got a new waypoint there, Telba minus 10, which is really good. Now you've noticed probably when I've clicked on that we get a little crosshairs. The crosshairs is useful, as you see, because it can tell you information that you click and point at. So RETSI, for example, if I click and point here, it will tell me waypoint info RETSI, click on that, you get the information about it. Really, really useful. You can click on an airfield. EGOS, which is Wolverhampton, I think. Click on that, you get your airfield information. So this cursor is relatively useful. However, it's even more useful than that, because let's say, for example, between here and Telba minus 10 they go, or we've got a horrible bit of weather we need to detour around. This is just for an example. What we can do is we can graphically edit the flight plan. We can take this leg, we can bring it out here, and it will go, oh, that's not the one I wanted, that's the one I wanted. And it will now choose, say, do you want this one or do you want this one? Let's go umlux there. And so you can see that actually you can just play with it. It's one of the joys of it being touchscreen is you're not limited to waypoints that are on the flight plan, and you don't have to do a great deal. So it's really easy, you know, if you have to do a slight off step and go to the side, drag that over there, boom, nailed it. Done. And you can actually do that for further ahead. So if I go over here, I've got a route here, and they say instead of routing direct to Banto, they want us to route up to Ebto. Graphically edit, grab that, up to Ebto, boom, nailed it. So you can see that now the graphical interface is becoming really, really useful. So you can add along track waypoints, you can change what you want. If you want to take the waypoint out, it won't take it out because now what you've got is a custom created waypoint. But what you can do is you can go to your flight plan and just take it out. So it's now no longer part of your flight plan. And the only thing I've noticed is that you lose the rest of the flight plan because it's getting a little bit confused now. So the way around that is to go back to that flight plan, and then where are we going? We're going to Telba, aren't we? Click on that, activate leg, Octad to Telba. Because basically what we've done by messing around with it is we've changed the leg itself. So if we now go back here, you can see we've got our route back. Because in effect what we'd done is when we'd put that waypoint in, we'd given it a new active leg. As soon as we took that waypoint out, it goes, well, what active leg do you want me on now? So you just go back into your flight plan, mess around with your active leg, because obviously visually it disappeared, so you couldn't interact with it at that point. So really that's your options in terms of editing the routes. If it's something where it's an edit of pre-existing information, you can go into your, let's just get out of that, you can go into your flight plan and you can do your usual load airway, insert after, insert before, etc. Or you can do what we've just mentioned, which is on the map, you can do your individual waypoint. Have a look at is user created waypoints. Now there's a few methods of doing this. I'll show you a couple, the more common ones I would suggest. And what we're going to do is put a waypoint over here. So we're going to put it sort of, I don't know, 330 from Octad and Telba, and we'll see where we get to. Or we're going to just put it about 15 miles to the west of Telba. So what we need to do is we need to go back to our main menu this time, waypoint info. So create waypoint, we want it to be out to the west of Staffa, so radial and distance, comment Staffa West, we'll give it a name. Which will help us identify it. We're then going to go down here, we're going to choose Staffa. Click there, it's going to ask us what radial we want, 270. And the distance, we just want to put it 15 miles. Enter. Make it temporary, because we want to be able to delete it. Create the waypoint, and there we go. Just to the west of Staffa we've got this new waypoint. Go to the edit list. What we can do is we can take that waypoint and we can choose to delete it, and boom, there it goes, it's gone off the user waypoints. So create waypoint, we want a new waypoint. What we're going to do is we're going to do it as radials this time. So what we want to do is have two waypoints, or sorry, one waypoint, but based on two things. So we're going to go for the first one, we're going to go Telba, and we want it due north of that. So the radial is just going to be 360, and then the other one is going to be Staffa again, and we want it to be west of that, so 270. Enter. Create, and again we've got another waypoint here. If I zoom in a little bit, you can see it's out to the west of Staffa. Our other waypoint somewhere down there, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to delete that, get rid of that. We don't want any user waypoints. So there we go with that. Okay, so we're a little bit further along the route, and what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at holds. We're going to have a look at inserting 3 holds. So what I'll do is I'll come slightly further across on here, and we'll look at putting some holds in near Banto. So the first thing we're going to do is go back. We're going to go to our flight plan. We're going to find Banto, and the first hold will be at Banto. So you click on Banto, it gives you a choice here, hold at waypoint, puts a graphical representation of the hold in. We want 074 inbound, and we'll go for a left turn just to be different. Because we're not flying particularly fast, but we are quite agile, we'll put in a 1 minute hold. And there you go. Load hold. Banto has got a hold now. You can insert after, you can activate the hold, edit hold, and remove. So back, look at the map over here towards Banto, and you can see it's now got this white dotted line because it's not been activated yet. So let's say, for example, that we're given an instruction to hold short of Banto, 10 miles short. Let's just zoom in a little bit. What we can do now is we can go, right, okay, flight plan. Let's find Banto. Don't want that hold, so remove that hold. What we're going to do now is put an along track waypoint 10 miles before Banto, and then what we do with that is we take that and we go hold at waypoint, and again same thing, it's just holding 10 miles short of Banto. Usual information there. exactly as you can expect. What we'll do, however, is remove that hold because we don't want to hold at Banto. What we want to do is hold off to the side. So let's have a look at that. It's basically ATC are going to tell us that they want us to hold 10 miles to the west of Staffa. Now obviously we don't have a waypoint. What we can do is put in a user generated waypoint, so what we will do is the usual thing. We'll go back in here, go back to here, down here, create a waypoint. We'll just use it, in fact we'll just use it as user 000. It's going to be Staffa West hold. Enter. Radial and distance from Staffa, we want this to be Staffa, and we're going to go 270 at 10 and create. So here we go. Looking back at our flight plan now, we've got a new waypoint here, or looking back at our chart, we've got a new waypoint here out to the west of Staffa. Now you can't hold at just a random waypoint. You can't go direct to and hold there. What you need to do is make it part of your flight plan. So what we can do is go back here, go on to here. We can visually edit the flight plan. We can go back to here, and what we can do is we can go insert after, and we're going to go user. In fact, it's not got an E on it, so we'll just quickly backspace that. There we go, and now we've got that in the flight plan. So if I go and look at the map, you'll see that we've got a new waypoint up here, and what we're going to do now is we're going to set up our hold. So what we can do is we can go back now, back to our flight plan, click on that, hold that waypoint. We're going to do an inbound course of 090, and it'll be interesting to see what it does here because it's supposed to be turning left and doing a parallel hold. So we'll do the leg time as 1 minute. Load hold, and you can now see that what we've got is user waypoint, Staffa West hold, and then holding for 1 minute. Back, have a look at it on the map, and that's where we're going to go up there and do a hold. And you can see it's dashed because we're not active with it at the moment. So what I'll do is I will unpause the sim, I'll trudge along there, and I will join you just before we start in the hold. And actually it's quite nice. You can see that it's drawn on that it's a parallel hold entry. So basically what we do is we initially go to our user waypoint here. We then fly on an outbound heading. We then fly on a reciprocal of the inbound heading, and then we kind of do a teardrop turn round to the left to come back to the beacon, and then once you're in the beacon you establish in a hold, and you do the normal hold. So we've got right hand turn hold here. We'll just spend a couple of minutes. I'll probably just step it through a couple of times just to see how it goes. There's a nice turn there. Just zoom in a bit. It's jumped out with its magnification, but we'll zoom in, and as you see it's going to do a lovely parallel entry to the turn, or parallel turn into the parallel entry I should say. So I've got no qualms it's going to manage that. What we're going to do is do a cheeky exit from that. So what we're going to do is not that, we're going to go back to here, we're going to go to our flight plan. The user hold, we're going to exit the hold at that. What it should do now is it should come back, route back round here to our user point, and then it should return to our normal flight plan. So in theory what it should do is rejoin and go up towards Staffa. So I'll keep an eye on that. So it's exiting the hold, and now what we're going to do is, because it's going back onto the active flight plan, we want to mess around a little bit, and we're going to go and have a go at landing at Birmingham. So instead what we're going to do is go direct to nearest airport. and we should be able to find Birmingham on here. No. EGBB. Course 2, yeah, we want to activate that. And basically we're binning the rest of the flight plan now, so we're going to go direct to that. She's going to turn inbound. Okay, so I'm going to try something a bit different here. So we've got a bit of an emergency scenario here. We've got an aircraft that's apparently crashed somewhere near an airfield called Taton Hill, Echo Golf Bravo Mike, and we've been requested if we can go and do some search and rescue. So let's see how we get on here. So let's see if we can find it on here first. Echo Golf Bravo Mike, there it is. And what we can do is we can bring that, drag that, graphically edit flight plan, drag that over to Taton Hill, EGBM, done. So that's that done. Now what we need to do is go back to our flight plan, Taton Hill, activate leg, Stafford to EGBM. That'll start to take us back round towards there. What we can then do is we'll start a descent down to about 5,000 feet. In fact, we'll go all the way down to 4,000 so that we can have a good look at the ground below. Doesn't like the gear warning horn for that. Got about 13 miles to run, so it's going to be a bit tight to get down, but we will manage it. And in the meantime, what we're going to do is at Taton Hill, what we want to do is go for a star. We're going to go for an expanding square search. Initial track 360, direction left. In fact, we'll do the initial track will be 090, enter, and we will do it to the right. Initial turn to direction right. Track spacing 1.5, enter. Load and activate pattern. Okay, so, oh, hello. What's happening is we've got a designated point here where they want the search pattern to start, and somewhere in this area an aircraft has theoretically gone down. So what we need to do is make our way to the location, and you can see here what we've got is an expanding square. So basically what happens is the search aircraft will fly a leg, keeping a lookout, turn, fly a leg, look out, fly a leg, look out, fly a leg, and looking out all the way as you go around. And the theory is that basically if they've gone down somewhere over here, for example, to the sort of north, then in theory what you would be able to do is over a period of time, as this square gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you would eventually get to a point where you've searched a very large area, and hopefully you've then discovered where the person is. So we're getting down towards our point where we want to be, still descending nice and rapidly. And you can see it's you can adjust the miles in terms of the distances between the legs, but what we'll do is we'll just get rid of that and we'll see if it's going to fly, because I'm going to have to keep an eye on our speed as we do this, because you want to, if you're doing a real search, you want to do it as slow as you can. In fact, we should be able to get down below that. We want to get down below this cloud, really, don't we? Go down to 2,500. It's fascinating to see if this is going to work. I guess the number of times it's going to be used in a sim is very few, but if you're flying the Dreamfall, for example, it's great for making missions. Great. Okay, so we haven't got a ridiculous rate of descent. 3,700 feet into the Clag. Just going to bring that rate of descent off, arrest it a bit with the throttles. Yeah, you don't want to go much lower, do you?
2,500.
we'll hold that, maybe just let it go down a little bit. Okay, so as we're level now, we're just going to let the speed drop off. We don't want to be doing this too tight. Let's make sure we've got one notch of flaps down just to help us. And we'll see what we can see down by Taton Hill. Just going to get that out of the way. That's one of the most useful things in this aircraft, if I'm honest, that little indicator in terms of what's going on. Now I'll stick this out to the top right, and we'll see what we're doing in terms of going round in a circle. Just watching the speed at the minute more than anything. We'll let it do a lap, maybe a bit more, and then we'll disappear off for a landing. So yeah, I mean, this is a bit of fun really. As I say, if you go back, flight plan. This is obviously our SAR plan, our expanding square search. 10 legs. You go here, load SAR. You can see the various options: expanding square, parallel track, which is, you know, that's quite a. The theory is you've got a slow-moving vehicle going this way, but it could be quite far left or right of track. Sector search, which is where you fly and do that, basically, and you can adjust the sectors. And an orbit is just basically literally looking over something, so we'll cancel that one. Speed's just dropping a little bit. Added a bit of power, arrest that drop. Now we're just coming into the start of our search, so if we look outside, dead over the top of Taton Hill. Horrible conditions out here. Horrible. How would you see if it can do this? I'm intrigued more than anything. I'm not going to let it go too far, because at this speed it's going to take frickin' hours to get around there. It's going to take less time than a helicopter normally would. But the thing is, what you do is you adjust the track spacings on a number of things. So if you lower down, you can't see as far, so you have a narrower track spacing. Likewise, if you're going fast, it's much harder to see the ground and to see detail on the ground. So ideally you want a helicopter, but the lower you go, the less you see, and the closer together the track spacing needs to be. Cracking, that is. I just want to see it do this bit here where it levels out and then it continues the turn later on, just to see if it does it. Has it got a long enough runway? Might just try 0826. It's tight. Yeah, it's flying that straight, isn't it? Nice. I'm liking that. It's a feature of the real aircraft that I wouldn't have anticipated being available in the sim. But then I suppose the reality is that it's the real life training tool. So there'll be people out there who will actually train and use this kit potentially in real life situations for search and rescue. So yeah, great, well impressed. Okay, what we're going to do is we're just going to use our airfield information that we've just got from our information here. Airport, nearest airport is exactly as we expect. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back, direct to nearest airport, Taton Hill, activate. We're we're just going to get that on the map, figure out where it is. It's round to our left, and we're just going to chuck ourselves in, do some sort of random approach and landing. This is probably the most unprofessional approach you could ever see, but we're just having a bit of fun now.
Think rate. 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 500. Think rate. Think rate. Think rate. 400. Think rate. Think rate. Think rate. 300. Think rate. Think rate. 200. Think rate. Think rate. Think rate. 100. Think rate. 50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
Traffic.
Whoop, bounce. Oh dear. Oh, we're all gonna die. All gonna die. Horrible, horrible, horrible. Somebody get search and rescue for us. Wow. Okay. Enough of the fun. Right, so let's wrap this up then, guys. The first thing I'm going to highlight is these two documents here. They are downloadable off the interwebs. One is the pilot's guide, which is 418 pages long. The other is the cockpit reference guide, which is another 100 and something odd pages long. And I'll drop links to these documents, both of them, in the description. Likewise, I'll pop timestamps in the description for all of the activities we've been through. So I hope you guys have found it useful. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have enjoyed it, please don't forget to tick like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Take care.